Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. As we wind up another week on Across the Fence, we're opening up our 60th anniversary archive. In today's retrospective, we're going to meet the author behind the best-selling book and movie, Forrest Gump. His name is Winston Groom. Groom visited Vermont in 1997 as part of Norwich University's Military Writers Symposium. He sat down at the Northfield Inn to talk about Forrest Gump and more with former Across the Fence host, Tony Adams.
We're delighted to have one of the guest authors with me today, Winston Groom, author of Shrouds of Glory, As Summers Die, Better Times Than These, Gump and Company as we go on, and of course, the fabulous Forrest Gump, the book that won Tom Hanks the 1995 Academy Award as Best Actor for his portrayal. Also, the director of that film got an Oscar, and the movie Forrest Gump also took home the Academy Award as Best Picture of the Year. Nice to have you with us, Winston.
And my pleasure.
Forrest Gump was published first, as I understand it, in 1986. What was the reaction to the book at that time?
By whom?
By the general public.
It did respectably. I think we sold 35,000, 40,000 copies in hardback, which it's embarrassing to say this, but when you sell that many, the publisher considers the thing a success.
Where did the idea of Forrest Gump come from?
It's hard. I've been asked this a lot, and the best I can describe it is one time I had gone back to Mobile, Alabama, where I'm from, to see my dad, who was quite old then and grew up around the turn of the century in Mobile. And he began to recollect when he was a young boy, in his neighborhood, there was another young boy who was retarded, and the kids used to chase him and tease him and, do what kids will do.
Yeah.
At some point, this young man's mother taught him how to play the piano. And so you had the specter of this sort of beautiful piano music wafting out over the streets in hot, dusty turn-of-the-century Mobile, and the other kids decided that they would quit this teasing and stuff and took him under their wing. So I thought, well, maybe I can use this as a scene somewhere in a book later on. And I went home that evening, sat down to take some notes, and by midnight I had written the first chapter of Forrest Gump.
Is that right? Was it a long process in writing the book? And
easiest thing I ever did, it wrote itself. I've heard of that happening. I think, 3 months or something. The whole thing, I did no research, no notes, no net whatsoever. It just, I just sit down every day and say, okay, what's he gonna do? I'd write for a couple hours, there it was.
Did you have a tough time getting a publisher for it?
No.
No.
Matter of fact, I was under contract with another publisher, not the publisher that published it, to do something else, and I called my agent the next morning after I'd done this, and I said, you got to get me out of this other contract. And he said, why? So I said, because I'm writing a book about an idiot. He said, is this an autobiographical book? And I said, probably. But when I finished it, my agent sent this thing out for what they call multiple submissions or something, and a number of people bid on it. Mm-hmm. And we finally wound up with whoever that publisher was.
What about the movie rights? That come along a lot longer? Or?
No, actually I think the movie rights was sold before the book was published. Mm-hmm. It just took a long time to get it made.
What was your reaction to what Tom Hanks did with it?
It's terrific. I mean, you could argue with that. Yeah. You don't argue with 800-pound gorilla.
Did you have any say on the screenwriting?
No, I mean, you never did. Yes and no. I did the first 3 or 4 scripts, and then they had about 8 or 10 other people that did various scripts, and then they did the one that, the shooting script, the one they actually filmed. And they would send them to me from time to time, and I would make comments, and they'd either take them or they wouldn't. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I remember one time they called me up, And they said, well, do you know anybody at the University of Alabama? Because we'd like to do some filming here. And I said, well, I know the president, if that would help you. And they said, well, yes. I said, well, send me the latest script. And so they wanted to shoot the Bear Bryant Museum and get some footage and then do some other stuff around there. And I looked at this thing, and it was some just little gross inaccuracies, historical inaccuracies in there. And I reminded the people, the producers there at the studio, that these things were going to make us look like laughingstocks, among other things. And they said, no, that didn't matter to them, that, you know, schools like to have movies made about them, whether they're right or not. And I said, well, I'll pass it along. So I sent it along. About a week later, I got a call, about 9 o'clock at night, down where I was. We were having a dinner party. It was about 6 o'clock at night out in California. One of these producers said, well, I don't understand this at all. He said, we just got a letter from the University of Alabama. He said, it's actually not even from the university, it's from their lawyers. And they say that we can not only not shoot the movie at the University of Alabama, we can't even use the name of the University of Alabama.
Wow.
I said, well, I hate to be it, I told you so. But in any case, they did. They cleaned up these historical inaccuracies and wound up doing a good movie.
Yeah, they sure did. The sales of the books then zoomed up after the movie came out?
Oh, yeah, it did. I don't know.
Bestseller list, right?
Yeah, it's millions. I don't know how many. It's nice.
You've lost track.
Well, you know, you don't get these statements, but every so often, but it sold a lot of books.
You did a Gumpisms, The Wit and Wisdom was a sequel?
No, that was just a little old thing that actually I wrote in 2 weeks at the request of the publisher, who is also owned by the movie studio. So they all mixed up with each other there. And before the movie came out, they called up my agent and asked if I would do just a little book of these sayings of Forrest Gump. And I thought I could get them out of the book, but it turned out I couldn't. I had to make them all up.
You had to make them all up? They weren't in the book originally?
I think I had maybe out of 100, I had 2 or 3 that were in the book.
What about being an idiot is no box of chocolates?
I think that's in the Gumpism. See, that's where it all gets crazy, because when the screenwriter wrote this thing, you know, what the heck was the line he used? Life is a box of chocolates or something like that, or wasn't my line. My line was that line right there, being idiot is no box of chocolates. Well, you turn around and I looked at it and I said, well, why the hell don't you use my line? Why are you using this line, you know? Well, what do I know? I mean, everywhere I go, people send me chocolates. I hate chocolates. But I mean, everywhere you go, people run around. It's on everybody's tongue. The box of chocolates business. So it's wild.
Is there a sequel coming up? Have you written one?
Oh, yeah, I wrote Gump and Company. Came out about a year and a half ago, something like that, and did very well. And Paramount owns it.
Oh, they do, but they haven't done anything with it yet?
No, they can. Well, see, the sequel is set 10 years after the first book. And so I think they're kind of waiting for Hanks to put a little age on him. And also agree to do it, because if they don't, I don't see how the hell they're going to make it.
Sure.
But they're very much, as they should be, interested in doing this and doing a good job at it. And it's very hard to make sequels. Just the process itself can be disappointing to an audience, and if it's disappointing to critics, you get killed. And it's an expensive show.
It's hard to match the original.
Oh, it's impossible.
It's impossible.
It's impossible. I mean, you can do, the Godfather series, I thought, held up pretty well, especially the second Godfather. But it's rare that you get a sequel. And so they're trying real hard to get the good script and get the thing just right and not just do some kind of exploitive thing.
Yeah. I was looking here, you've written a number of books on the Vietnam War, Better Times Than These, As Summers Die, and you co-authored Conversations with the Enemy. How'd you get started in that?
In
writing war novels?
Well, actually, I've only written one, which is Better Times Than These. I was in the war, and so I
You
think,
were in Vietnam?
yeah.
Mm-hmm. What did that experience mean to you? I mean,
Well, basically, it was just that I was young. It was something I did. I was in the Army, in ROTC in college before there was a Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
And as it turned out, when I graduated, 1965, everybody just got, shifted over there. And, I think that writers of my generation were, at that point, reading writers of the previous generation, such as Joe Heller, Irwin Shaw, James Jones, Norman Mailer,
World War II.
World War II writers. And I think, a war is a very seminal experience in any young man's life, I think, or any person's life. It's the biggest thing you ever did, and probably the biggest thing you're ever gonna do. Mm-hmm. And so, in my first book, not having anything else to say, I thought I'd talk about the war. Yeah. And I did. And there were people like Phil Caputo, you mentioned a few minutes ago, and some others who we all sort of felt the same thing. And
was this book based on your experiences during the war? Or
well, yeah,
some
sure,
of the experiences
sure,
out?
sure. But it's a novel. But you're always going to have, when you young as a writer, I think you've got to rely on your personal experiences. You just don't know enough
Right.
to do otherwise.
And that book did extremely well.
It did pretty well, yeah.
Yeah. Do you like writing military novels, or it just?
Not really. I mean, I don't really. I mean, the only book I've written really is Better Times Than These, and then I had one other book called Gone the Sun that had sort of a backflash to Vietnam in it. Mm-hmm. And those are the only novels that I've written, besides the little piece in the Gump books, that one Gump book about Vietnam. I will come back to the war every once in a while if I think it's appropriate.
What was Conversations with the Enemy? Was that a nonfiction thing?
It was about my ex-wife. No.
You picked me up on that.
No, it was a story of this guy called Robert Garwood, who was a Vietnam prisoner of war. He was a Marine. He was captured in '65 by the Viet Cong and was kept until like 77 or 78, well after the rest of the prisoners had gone home. And when he came back, the Marines court-martialed him as being a turncoat and convicted him of basically some charge that had to do with having conversations with the enemy, which is whence the title comes. But it was a nonfiction biographical account of this man's business.
Uh-huh. You got a book in the works. What's your newest book?
My newest book is, again, a departure from anything else I've ever done. It's set in Mexico in the years about 1915 and 16, during the Mexican Revolution, when Pancho Villa was on the loose, and it involves the kidnapping of children of a very wealthy family, American family, who owned land in Mexico, which many Americans did in those days, by Pancho Villa, and the subsequent manhunt to try to retrieve these children through dangerous territory with dangerous animals and dangerous people. So it's kind of a fun,
And the title is?
I don't really know yet.
Oh, you mean it hasn't been published?
Oh, no.
Oh,
I've only got about 150 pages, and right now I'm calling it El Paso, but I don't think I'm going to keep calling it that.
Does the publisher have anything to say about the title, or is that your choice?
In publishing, it's all my choice, but I listen to I've got probably the best editor in America right now, Bob Loomis at Random House, and he's Shelby Foote's editor and various, and he's a very, very wise man. And most editors these days are not editors; they're book buyers. But Bob is out of the Sachs Cumming and that genre of real editors.
Are you a disciplined writer? Do you say I'm going to spend 4 hours this day writing, or do you?
Yeah, 4 hours is 4 hours a little long, but I found that after 2 hours, I've pretty well spent myself. 2 very intense hours. You can get 3 or 4 or 5 pages like that. You got to do it. You got to approach it that way, like a business.
Yeah. Do you try to do it day after day, consecutively?
Yep.
Mm-hmm. Shelby Foote, of course, we got a lot of publicity with that Civil War series. You know him well?
I know Shelby, yes, I do
Yeah.
indeed.
Great writer.
Great writer, good man.
Well, I want to thank you very much, Winston, for being with us. I hope you enjoy your stay in Vermont.
I love it. Spring ain't sprung here yet, but it's nice.
Again, thank you very much for spending time with us. Winston Groom, the author of Forrest Gump, the highly acclaimed book and movie, as well as a lot of other successful books. We want to thank him very much for being with us and say that's about it for Across the Fence. We look forward to seeing you tomorrow, right after the noontime news and weather.